My husband signed my name on $1 million debt and never said a word. I found out when the bank called, when I saw my signature shaky precise but not mine on a contract I never touched. I wish that had been the worst of it, but it was only the beginning. I went from a wife who believed in loyalty to a woman he never saw coming. I didn't scream. I didn't beg anyone to believe me. I just waited. And I gathered evidence. Because when you try to drown someone in debt and lies, you better be sure they don't know how to swim better than you. If you've ever felt betrayed or just want to see justice served, hit subscribe, drop your thoughts in the comments, and stay with me until the very end. Celeste Rayner had always been cautious with paperwork. Contracts, bank forms, insurance policies. She read every line, highlighted every clause. A lifetime of working in corporate compliance at a healthcare firm had trained her to treat signatures like loaded weapons. That's why when the letter arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning, she opened it without hesitation, but with an instinctive alertness. It was from Fairmount Trust, a notice of overdue payment. Principal balance $1,000 She read it once, then again, then a third time. Celeste sat motionless at the kitchen table, her hand resting on the envelope like it might jump up and confess to being a mistake. The number didn't scare her. Not yet. What scared her was the line that followed: borrower Celeste M. Rayner, guarantor Adrian L. Rayner. She wasn't a borrower, not of this, not of anything even close to this. Her first thought wasn't panic. It was confusion, crisp and cutting, the kind that whispers, "Check again." So she did. The document summary included a scanned copy of the loan agreement. There on the final page was her signature, unmistakable. The familiar slant of the C, the deliberate little hook on the R. Even the flourish she never used on anything but official documents. It looked exactly like hers, but it wasn't. She hadn't signed this. She knew it the way you know your own heartbeat. Her husband, Adrian, had always managed their investment accounts. He was a strategic consultant floating between startup acquisitions and fintech ventures. Celeste had never needed to question their finances, or so she thought. Adrian projected calm clarity and competence. He was the kind of man who always knew the market's next move. But apparently he also knew how to forge a signature. She called him. No answer. She texted. "Did you take out a loan with Fairmount Trust under my name?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished. For 2 long minutes the screen stayed blank. Finally his reply came. "Don't worry, I've got it handled." Handled? Her fingers tightened around the phone. Not explained, not clarified, just handled. Celeste looked up, staring at the refrigerator door covered in magnets from Napa, Denver, Montreal. Trips they took, smiles they wore, memories that now felt like counterfeit bills. She pulled her laptop closer and began digging. Fairmount Trust wasn't just a bank. It was a private lending firm specializing in high-risk, high-yield investment capital, the kind of place that loaned to people who didn't want questions, asked only answers delivered in cash. Adrian knew what he was doing. That signature wasn't a mistake. It was an insurance policy. If the deal failed, and clearly it had, she would be the one holding the bag. And still he hadn't even bothered to lie properly. He hadn't denied it. He hadn't offered a reason. He'd just said, "I've got it handled." Celeste didn't cry. Not yet. Crying would come later when anger had burned through every last illusion. For now her mind moved in cold surgical patterns. If this was true, if he had forged her name, weaponized her identity, and signed her future away for a gamble, then there would be consequences. Not just legal ones, personal ones. That night when Adrian came home, late as usual, Celeste didn't ask him anything. She didn't mention the letter or the signature or the silence that now filled the kitchen like smoke. She kissed his cheek and poured him wine. He smiled like nothing had changed. And that's when Celeste decided he would never see it coming. Celeste didn't confront Adrian, not in the way people expected wives to. No shouting match in the hallway, no trembling hands holding up a bank notice demanding answers. She'd spent years watching people crumble under confrontation at work. Anger made people defensive, but silence made them careless, so she smiled. She made pasta. She pretended not to notice how his briefcase was lighter, how he spent more time on the phone with clients he wouldn't name, or how his hands trembled slightly when he poured wine, as if part of him already knew she knew. By the end of that week, Celeste had gathered copies of every joint account they shared, every investment portfolio, and every property deed. She didn't use her work email. She didn't print anything at home. She used a flash drive encrypted with 3 layers of password protection and stored it under the loose tile beneath the guest room bed. It wasn't paranoia. It was protocol. Then she called Bennett Carlisle, her former law school classmate, and now a rising legal advisor for corporate fraud cases in downtown Chicago. They hadn't spoken in years, not since she left law for compliance work. But Bennett didn't hesitate when he heard her voice. "Are you in danger?" he asked. "No," she said, "but he is." She met him under the guise of a lunch break. She wore sunglasses and changed out of her usual flats into red-heeled boots Adrian never liked. She needed to feel sharp. She needed to feel like someone with power. Bennett reviewed the document slowly, lips tightening with each page. "That's your signature," he finally said. "No, it's not." He looked up. "Then this is identity fraud, at a felony level. You know that, right?" Celeste nodded. "I need a strategy, one that doesn't just protect me, but makes sure he pays for it." Bennett didn't smile, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of admiration, or perhaps anticipation. "Then we'll need more than documents. We'll need motive trail intent, and something solid enough that if he tries to twist it in court, he'll hang himself." Celeste leaned in. "Then let's start building the rope." Over the next 2 weeks, she did what Adrian never thought she could. She watched. She listened. She remembered. She noticed the 3 a.m. text alerts from a name he never saved in his phone, just SD. She followed the Lyft receipts billed to his consulting expenses, which oddly ended in spa resorts or upscale hotels. She even caught him once in the mirror of their hallway, fixing his collar, smoothing his shirt, and checking his teeth before heading out for a pitch meeting. He'd never done that before. Not for clients, not for her. That night she borrowed his phone while he showered. No passcode change. He hadn't expected her to care anymore. That was his mistake. She found a photo. Just one. A selfie. His arm around a woman with fire-red lipstick, and a hand on his chest like she owned him. Her name was visible in the corner of a forwarded email, Scarlett Dorsey. Celeste didn't scream. She just saved the image, emailed it to herself, and deleted the evidence. Then she flushed the toilet to cover the sound, returned the phone exactly as she found it, and smiled when Adrian stepped out of the bathroom. "You should take a weekend off," she said sweetly. "You've been working so hard." He nodded, oblivious. Maybe soon. Yes, she thought. Maybe very, very soon. On Monday, Celeste contacted Max Calder, a former cybersecurity consultant she'd worked with briefly during a data breach review. He was eccentric, slightly paranoid, and brilliant. She told him she needed help tracing back a private loan's origin point without alerting the borrower. Max didn't ask why. He just asked, "How soon do you need it?" "Yesterday," Celeste said. Within 3 days, Max had uncovered the shell company Adrian used to route the loan funds. It wasn't just for one investment, it was for 3, all of them bleeding capital, all of them in Adrian's name, and hers, and one of them a private condo in Scarlett Dorsey's name. "Your husband isn't just a fraud," Max said. "He's an idiot." "No," Celeste replied. "He's arrogant, and soon he'll be broke." Celeste had never stepped into a courtroom as a defendant, but she knew the scent. It was sharp, a mix of old carpet printer toner and something metallic that clung to tension like a second skin. As she sat in the sleek office of Bennett Carlisle, now officially retained as her legal counsel, she read the letter on the table again. Fairmount Trust Vert Celeste M. Rayner. Her name was on the top, but Adrian's fingerprints were all over it. "This is their first move," Bennett said, tapping the header. "They're going for judgment by default. They assume you won't fight it." Celeste looked up. Then let's surprise them. They filed a motion to contest the debt within 48 hours, citing signature forgery and fraudulent intent. That alone would buy her time. But time wasn't enough. She needed proof, and she needed to stay 10 steps ahead. Adrian still didn't know she was fighting him. In fact, he came home that night with takeout and cheap wine, acting like everything was normal. He scrolled through his phone at the kitchen counter while she washed dishes. Casual, relaxed, like nothing could touch him. Celeste dried her hands slowly. Do you remember that gallery downtown? The one with the marble floors? He blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. Why? That was the first place I realized I didn't know who you were. She didn't wait for his answer. She just walked upstairs and closed the bedroom door. While Bennett built a case around the forged loan documents, Celeste quietly began gathering a different kind of leverage. Financial evidence might win her the case, but emotional leverage could destroy Adrian's credibility. She reached out to Scarlett Dorsey. It wasn't difficult. Scarlett was a lifestyle blogger/business consultant who curated her life on Instagram like it was an audition for reality TV. She posted photos of wine tastings, rooftop brunches, and luxury handbags, all with captions that somehow included vague hashtags like grindset and manifest wealth. Celeste created a fake account, a composite identity, anonymous but intriguing, and began commenting, liking messaging. It only took 3 days. Scarlett was flattered, curious. She replied quickly. Celeste baited her with questions about consulting deals and VC circles. Then she steered the conversation toward Adrian. Scarlett responded with heart emojis and a private selfie of them in the Bahamas. Celeste saved every image, every flirty message, every time-stamped confession. By the end of the week, she had screenshots of Scarlett referring to Adrian as her partner in both business and life. She even called herself future Mrs. Rayner. Celeste almost laughed. Meanwhile, Max Calder kept digging. And what he found next was explosive. Adrian had attempted to transfer their marital home, the house Celeste's late father had paid the down payment on, into a corporate asset pool linked to one of his shell companies. If the court ruled against her, she would not only owe the money, she would lose the house. You realize what this is? Bennett said when she showed him the paperwork. It's asset shielding. He's preparing for bankruptcy using your name as the firewall. Celeste's jaw clenched. Can we reverse it? Oh, we'll do more than that, Bennett said. We'll prove criminal intent. He's about to learn what it feels like to be cross-examined by someone who actually knows how to play the long game. Celeste sat back, fingers curled lightly around her coffee mug. She didn't tremble. She didn't cry. She simply said, good. The court date was scheduled. Adrian was served a summons at home. He acted confused, feigned surprise, even indignation. Celeste watched him calmly as he tried to bluff his way through dinner. You know, I've got a lot on my plate right now, he said. Some people don't appreciate how much pressure I'm under. She nodded, expression neutral. You're right. Some people don't. He reached across the table. We just need to stick together. Ride this out. She let him take her hand, and in that moment her silence wasn't forgiveness. It was the pause before the strike. The courthouse stood like a slab of stone under a gray Chicago sky, impassive, cold, and waiting to swallow its next mistake. But Celeste Rayner didn't feel like the one making a mistake. She sat beside Bennett Carlisle in the pre-trial conference room, back straight, hands folded, watching Adrian on the other side of the table. Her husband looked tired. Not outwardly, he still wore his tailored blazer and expensive watch, but something in his eyes had dulled. He no longer scanned the room like he was in control. He was reacting now. That was new. His attorney, a younger man named Fraser Dunn, leaned forward. My client is willing to settle this civilly. A repayment plan. No admission of wrongdoing. A quiet resolution. Bennett didn't even glance at Celeste. My client is not interested in being quietly buried. Adrian cleared his throat. Celeste, come on. We're talking about money. We can fix this. Celeste turned her gaze on him. Calm. Precise. You didn't just lie, Adrian. You signed my name. You gambled with my future. And you thought I'd either cover it or collapse under it. Adrian's lips parted as if to say something tender, redemptive, but Bennett beat him to it. "We'll see you in court." The hearing didn't draw a crowd, but it didn't need one. Celeste entered the courtroom with her chin-high documents in hand, her expression unreadable. On the witness stand, she delivered her testimony with quiet precision, identifying the loan documents, the forged signature, and the timeline of events. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. The power was in the evidence. Fraser objected. He implied that Celeste had authorized the loan verbally, a private marital agreement, that she had supported Adrian's ventures in the past, but Bennett anticipated it. He pulled out Max Calder's report tracing the funds from Fairmount Trust directly to Adrian's LLC, and from there to a luxury condo titled in Scarlett Dorsey's name. Celeste watched Adrian shift in his seat. Then Bennett introduced the photo the Bahamas selfie Scarlett had sent complete, with metadata, time-stamped just 2 days after the loan was processed. Fraser scrambled to redirect. "This is not a criminal trial. We're here to determine financial responsibility, not relationship fidelity." Bennett didn't flinch. And what better measure of responsibility than how one manages trust? The judge didn't rule that day. But when Celeste walked out of the courtroom, her heels tapping like clockwork on the marble floor, she already knew what was coming. The tide had shifted. That night, Adrian waited for her at the house. He stood in the living room shirt, half untucked, a glass of scotch in hand. "You really want to destroy me?" he asked. "Is that what this is?" Celeste set her keys down carefully. "I wanted to know why," she said. "Why you did it. Why you chose her. Why you used my name like a safety net." Adrian's shoulders dropped. "Because I thought I'd figure it out before anyone got hurt. And if I hadn't..." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Celeste stepped forward, her voice low. "I'm not trying to destroy you, Adrian. I'm trying to survive you." Then she turned and walked upstairs. She closed the door behind her with the quiet finality of someone who'd already made her decision. The call came 2 days after the hearing. Celeste was in Bennett's office reviewing the next round of exhibits when her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She stepped out to answer. "Celeste Rayner," the voice asked, cautious but clear. "This is she. Well, my name's Scarlett Dorsey, and I think we need to talk." Celeste met Scarlett at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop on the north side of the city, where the baristas didn't ask questions and the tables were spaced far apart. Scarlett arrived first. She looked different in person. Still polished, still deliberately effortless, but the usual sparkle had dimmed. Her lipstick wasn't fire red. It was soft, almost apologetic. "Thank you for meeting me," Scarlett said, fingers tight around her mug. Celeste nodded, but didn't speak. She wanted to know what Scarlett knew, and more importantly, why she was here now. "I didn't know," Scarlett began. "Not about the signature. Not about the house. Adrian said everything was legit. He made it sound like you were stepping back, that your name on the paperwork was just a formality." Celeste said nothing. Scarlett shifted uncomfortably. "I found out about the court case from someone in his office. Then I saw my name in the subpoena list. I panicked. I thought if they drag me into this..." "You are already in it," Celeste said calmly. Scarlett's lips tightened. "That's why I'm here. I have something you might want." She slid an envelope across the table. Inside were printed screenshots, emails, messages, even voice memos. Some from Adrian, some from Scarlett, all referencing financial transactions, hidden accounts, and more than one backdated agreement involving Celeste's signature. "You kept this?" Celeste asked. Scarlett shrugged. "He lied to you. Then he lied to me. I figure someone should win in the end. Might as well be the one who didn't write love notes on fake loan contracts." Celeste slid the envelope into her bag without another word. She didn't thank Scarlett. She just stood, nodded once, and walked away. Back at the office, Bennett reviewed the materials and smiled for the first time since the case began. "This changes everything he said. It proves not just fraud, but premeditation. We can file for punitive damages. And if he contests, we press criminal charges." Celeste sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. Punishment wasn't the goal. Not entirely. What she wanted more than restitution was recognition. She wanted it on record, legal permanent, that she hadn't been the fool in this story. That mattered. Meanwhile, Adrian Rayner was unraveling. Bennett's office received notice that Adrian's defense team had requested a continuance citing client unpreparedness due to emotional distress. Celeste didn't blink when she heard. She simply replied, "Deny it." The judge did. The trial would proceed on schedule. And now Celeste had more than enough evidence, not just to walk away clean, but to leave Adrian tethered to the very debt he created. That evening, she returned home to find Adrian in the study, glassy-eyed and surrounded by opened folders. Papers were scattered across the floor like feathers, some financial, some personal. He looked up when she entered. "I know what you're doing," he said. Celeste set her purse down. "I loved you, Cel?" he said, voice cracking. I was trying to fix everything before it got out of hand. I thought if I could just get ahead of it." "You used me," she said softly. "You saw my name not as a partner but as a shield." He didn't deny it. Instead, he whispered, "You're going to ruin me." Celeste tilted her head just slightly. "No, Adrian. I'm just going to make sure the wreckage has your name on it. Not mine." She turned and walked out, leaving him in the silence he built himself. The final hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp in courtroom 3B. Celeste arrived 15 minutes early. She didn't wear black. She wore navy bold, composed, unflinching. Her hair was pulled back. Her heels clicked across the marble floor like a slow, measured countdown. Adrian was already inside. He looked smaller than she remembered. Or maybe he'd finally shrunk to the size of his choices. His tie was crooked. His fingers kept twitching against the table. Next to him, Fraser looked like a man who regretted taking this case and wished it would disappear before lunch. The judge entered. Court came to order. Bennett stood first. He presented the forged loan documents. He followed with bank statements tracing the funds. Then he laid out Scarlett's messages and the audio recordings from Max's digital audit. Clear proof not only had Adrian forged Celeste's name, but he had deliberately diverted funds into private accounts, bought property under false pretenses, and attempted to shift joint marital assets into corporate shelters to avoid accountability. Then Bennett dropped the final blow. A signed statement from Scarlett Dorsey under oath declaring she had been misled and used to facilitate asset laundering on Adrian's behalf, including false lease agreements and backdated communications. Your Honor, Bennett said, "We're not only asking for the court to dismiss Fairmount Trust's claim against my client, but for full damages attorney fees and a judicial referral for potential criminal prosecution under Section 720, ILCS 517-3 forgery and financial fraud." The courtroom was still. No one moved. No one spoke. Even Adrian didn't breathe. Then the judge turned to him. "Mr. Rayner, do you have anything to say before I rule?" Adrian stood. Just for a moment. He looked at Celeste. "I didn't mean to hurt her," he muttered. "I just thought I could fix it before it got this far." The judge stared him down like a parent waiting for a real apology. "That's not how the law works, Mr. Rayner." The judgment was swift. Celeste was cleared of all liability. Adrian was held solely responsible for the full balance owed to Fairmount Trust. He was also ordered to pay Celeste's legal fees, plus an additional $200,000 in punitive damages. A criminal referral was submitted to the Illinois Attorney General's office. As Adrian sat stunned, his face slack and pale, Celeste gathered her bag, rose quietly, and walked out of the courtroom for the last time. She didn't look back. Outside it was raining, that kind of soft spring rain that made the pavement smell like stone and memory. Bennett handed her a sealed folder. "That's everything. It's over." Celeste nodded. But it wasn't really about the documents, or the debt, or even Adrian. It was about something no court could write into a verdict. She had reclaimed her name, her power, her silence. The world would still spin. Banks would still call. Mistakes would still happen. But she wouldn't flinch again. Not for someone like him. As she stepped into her car and closed the door, she caught her reflection in the rear-view mirror. And for the first time in a long while, she saw herself. 3 weeks later, Celeste sat at a small cafe overlooking the river, her laptop open but untouched. A spring breeze stirred the hem of her blouse. Somewhere across the water, someone laughed. The sound felt strange, like a language she hadn't heard in a long time, but suddenly understood again. The court had done its part. The paperwork was final. Adrian was drowning in his own debt, and this time she wasn't the life raft. She could have left it there. But there was one thing left, one thing only she could do. She opened a blank document and began typing. Adrian, I'm not writing this so you'll understand. I've given up on that. I'm writing because there are things I needed to say long before lawyers and judges stood between us. You didn't just forge my name. You took my trust and signed it away. You saw me as convenient, reliable, something you could bet with and abandon, and for a long time I hated you for it. But now, I don't. You freed me. Not by choice, not with kindness, but through betrayal so deep it scraped me clean. I don't forgive you. I don't need to. You'll carry what you did, and I'll carry what I survived. That's the difference between us. Celeste, she never printed it. She didn't need to. She simply closed the laptop, took a long sip of her coffee, and looked out over the water. Not waiting for an ending. Not chasing justice. Just breathing and finally feeling light. Because in the end it wasn't about revenge. It was about removing the weight someone else tried to bury her with, and standing up taller, stronger, and alone, but whole.